This video is about a homemade, cheap construction super material that you can use to make almost anything. I filmed it for a whole year. It's time to organize the past construction season. I think it's worth it. For regular viewers of the Yasha Koshak Songs channel who closely follow all the projects and don't miss anything, this video will also be interesting. Because I'll tell you how all the constructed objects are being used and how they're doing now after some time. This material is easy and convenient to work with. Everything I tried turned out well. A fence that looks expensive and solid, but is actually lightweight and cheap. A deep biological treatment septic tank that doesn't require pumping. Its body costs less than just the delivery of a store-bought one. All the components can be transported in a regular car. Garden paths made from this material, which are so lightweight that they don't require any base preparation, would make even oligarchs envious. And using it to make swimming pools allows the water to heat up very quickly thanks to its low thermal conductivity. Its waterproofness also makes it possible to do without expensive waterproofing. And this is a chance for our summer residents, gardeners, villagers, and people living in private urban areas to surpass Americans in the number of swimming pools per capita. Gates filled with this material, unlike metal and wooden ones, can be finished with a huge variety of very beautiful finishing coatings, both store-bought and inexpensive homemade ones. A homemade composter for cut grass, thanks to its extremely high thermal efficiency, takes composting to a whole new level. And a tall, warm, super productive insulated garden bed will not only help you get a harvest in a cool climate, but should also help you survive even in a post-apocalypse if the sun suddenly stops shining and warming like it used to. In the previous video, I even tried making garden furniture from this unique material. The result exceeded expectations. Hello everyone, let's go through everything step by step. Last construction season, I started by making a dummy mold for the rings of a deep biological treatment septic tank, which, according to the plan, shouldn't require pumping out. I made the mold from leftover timber pieces and unwanted scraps of fiberboard. I secured everything onto a piece of an old ping pong table. I bought Penoplex comfort sheets just 3 centimeters thick and gave them a rough surface using a wood saw blade detached from its handle. I glued 2 sheets together lengthwise. I used an adhesive compound designed for attaching mineral wool and polystyrene boards to building facades that need insulation and for creating a base reinforcing layer on their surface. I also used an alkali-resistant fiberglass mesh with a 5x5mm grid. On one side of the glued sheets, I applied the so-called base reinforcing layer. All these materials are sold in any hardware store. I wrapped the prepared piece around the mold, securing it with vertical bars. Penoplex is a material that is quite strong in compression, which is why it is widely used for floor insulation. It can be safely laid under heavy screeds, but it is rather brittle when bent. Under certain conditions, the insulation can be bent. The small area of our canopy space did not allow us to wind a blank for the mold larger than 2 sheets glued together lengthwise. Therefore, I glued the next sheets of Penoplex in place. For reliable and quick bonding of extruded polystyrene foam, construction polyurethane adhesive foam is excellent. Unlike regular mounting foam, this adhesive expands much less, making it more convenient for such tasks. I continued to apply the base reinforcing layer and wend the blank onto the mold. For me, as an average person with a non-technical education and not a working profession, everything was very easy, which shows how simple this method is. In warm weather, the reinforcing layer, just a few millimeters thick, sets quickly. The form-holding bars are no longer needed. Since a septic tank is a serious thing, it must at least withstand the pressure of the soil from the outside and the contents from the inside. I decided to apply the reinforcing layer again. I've heard from facade professionals that double reinforcement increases strength many times over. Our septic tank should turn out warm. Surely this will help bacteria work faster and more efficiently when treating sewage. At first, I planned to simply remove the rings from the mold, but since I didn't have a second pair of hands at the time, I took a different approach and temporarily disassembled the dummy mold. Well, it's beautiful. Then I repeated the application of reinforcing layers on the inside of the septic ring. Penoplex is becoming increasingly popular for facade insulation. It doesn't have the drawback of being drafty, which can be a problem with walls insulated with mineral wool. It allows continuous contour insulation suitable for blind areas, plinths, floors, walls, balconies, and roofs. With the right approach, it performs excellently in frame walls. That's why I was confident that when applying the reinforcing layers according to the technology, they wouldn't fall off and would last a very long time. The technology is simple, easy, and well tested for decades on millions of square meters of facades made from reinforced foam board and mixtures. A person who picks up the simple plastering tools for the first time, just like I did, will surely succeed on the first try. You can also reinforce with fiberglass mesh pieces, ensuring at least a 10 cm overlap. These rings cost less to produce than what it would cost just to deliver and unload traditional concrete rings. Since concrete rings require expensive special equipment services, all the components for these rings can be transported in a personal car. After making the first ring, over the next few days, I easily made as many as I needed. While making the last ring, I started thinking about waterproofing the future septic tank. I realized my mistake in not immediately thinking to take advantage of the huge benefit of using Penoplex, such as its almost zero water absorption and, as a result, 100% waterproofing. It's a shame. Too bad that a good idea, as often happens, comes only afterwards. After catching my breath and making a few more items using the same method, which I'll talk about a bit later, I started making a warm and immediately sealed septic tank. In the Septic Tank Reloaded project, I decided to completely abandon the dummy mold. Even though I didn't spend much time making it, time is money too. For those who choose to repeat everything, it will be simpler. With the help of a temporarily attached piece of mesh, I got pre-bent foam blanks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For a single 2 cubic meter tank, only 8 curved blanks were needed. I glued the base of the septic tank from 4 sheets. I trimmed the excess glue. Using a block as a compass, I drew a 1.5 meter diameter circle. The fixed pencil pressed into the material, creating a visible line, which is what mattered. Penoplex is completely waterproof, but the joints glued with polyurethane foam adhesive can be water permeable. An alternative was to use a waterproof adhesive, but foam adhesive is more convenient and faster to work with. So it was decided to use just a small amount of waterproofing and seal only the joints. Moisture-proof waterproofing is inexpensive and only protects against moisture. It can be used, for example, on bathroom walls before laying tiles. It is designed for waterproofing various damp areas. Here, water-resistant waterproofing was needed. This type is used when creating reservoirs, treatment facilities, inside swimming pools, and water tanks. Sealing the entire surface of the septic tank with it would be very expensive. Gluing the lightweight sheets into a circle along the line turned out to be an easy task. By that time, I had already experienced the high cost of reliable 2-component elastic waterproofing firsthand when I was sealing the entire surface of the open balcony floor in our main house. After that work, a small amount of waterproofing was left over. After thinking it over, I decided that it should be enough to seal all the joints of the future septic tank. The rest is just a matter of technique, or rather, technology. Just like with the rings, a basic reinforcing layer is applied. After thoroughly examining the double reinforced rings for the initial septic tank version, this time I decided to go with single reinforcement. Reinforcing in 2 layers might have been unnecessary overkill. Monetization on the channel is almost non-existent, so I would really appreciate your support for the ultra-budget methods that we tried to implement on the Yasha Kosyak Songs channel. You can do this through the sponsorship button here on YouTube. Viewers from Russia can support the projects through the Boosty service. I left the link under the video. For extra reliability, I repeated the seam sealing on the outside as well. Reinforcing foam board with adhesive mixture and fiberglass mesh on both sides transforms it into a durable composite material, not just plastered extruded polystyrene foam. The round shape should give the whole structure extra rigidity. While studying the intricacies of sewage treatment, I realized that in commercial deep biological treatment septic tanks, the lion's share of the cost comes from the large plastic tank itself. This option should allow for significant savings on it. By the way, store-bought and ready-made septic tanks are incredibly expensive. In deep biological treatment septic tanks, all the work of cleaning the wastewater is done by bacteria that love warmth. That's why the high thermal insulation properties of Penoplex are exactly what's needed. A septic tank made of warm composite should work just as efficiently in cold weather as it does in warm weather. I hope that I could make a septic tank with better characteristics than the ones you can buy, and most importantly, much cheaper. At first glance, the complex interior with brush loading, a system of polypropylene pipes, and a low-power compressor for aeration is actually simple to make and should be quite inexpensive. Recently, the Soj River near our village has been flooding unusually often and severely, and this happens even in winter. Recently, our river was sadly shallow. However, everything has changed drastically. The river is now very full, with the Soj flowing into the Dnieper, seemingly held back by a dam. There wasn't much snow in the winter, but the spring flood turned out to be strong and long-lasting. The groundwater rose very high, and even to get into the shallow basement of our house for preserves, we had to wade in wearing fishing boots. Even when summer began, the groundwater remained high, and I just couldn't start any work on the land. I was eager to test the septic tank. Installing it properly in the ground was still impossible, so I decided to do the initial leak tests above ground. I picked a spot in the yard where it wouldn't be obstructive. I prepared a temporary base made of compacted and leveled sand. After all, with water, the weight will be over 2 tons, and that's no joke. By then, Yasha Kosyak's channel had already released a video about starting to build a septic tank using insulated rings. I started increasing the tank to the required height. The video about the septic tank sparked a lot of interest and many questions from the channel's viewers. I really didn't want to disappoint the audience's expectations. Installing the second row of curved Penoplex also turned out to be a simple task. I sealed the newly formed seams again. Afterwards, it's all about technology and technique. I kept working and kept wondering how to make a new video about the septic tank, which for some reason is still above ground. Some may think Yasha Kosyak has gone crazy, not comprehending his actions. I know that the channel has the best viewers, but even they might laugh at me with a septic tank like this. And then it hit me. I thought it through. A septic tank is a large container for dirty water, and for example, a plunge tub or a mini pool is also a container for water, but for clean water. Therefore, what exactly the tested container is called doesn't matter at all. If this way results in a properly functioning, watertight plunge tub or mini pool, this is an even greater success as it significantly enhances the method's versatility. I couldn't keep this innovation to myself and quickly made a new video about it. But this time it's about a plunge mini pool. Using the cheapest tile adhesive, I decorated yesterday's septic tank to look like a Mediterranean style plunge mini pool. My wife and daughter helped paint. I filled it with water and voila, a great plunge mini pool unexpectedly appeared in the yard. It turned out to be a completely sealed container for 2 cubic meters of water. It's sturdy, dirt cheap to make, and warm. The water in it heated up very quickly on sunny days and hardly cooled down during cool nights. Viewers who were waiting for another video about the warm septic tank watched the video about the plunge pool and realized that the method is completely viable. By the second half of the summer, the groundwater finally receded. At the same time, our old septic tank started working somehow. The fried rooster stopped pecking, I relaxed, and decided to postpone the heavy earthwork until the next season. As of this video's release, the facility is in the midst of winter testing. If such a tank is used as a plunge pool, swimming pool, or irrigation tank, it needs to be emptied for the winter. There is no bottom valve yet. I used a submersible root cheek pump. With such a tank, even the grass has become greener. And here's the object I made while catching my breath between the rings and the septic tank, a mini pool plunge tub. This is a composter for mowed grass, and it was originally intended to be a composter. On it, I practiced the method of bending Penaplex using a temporarily attached mesh with a very small radius, almost at a right angle. The composter made of boards became almost completely unusable in a fairly short time. This is not our first composter. We have to rebuild them from time to time. We have 2 composters in constant use. I'm tired of rebuilding them. I designed a composter that would last over 50 years, which is exactly how long Penaplex lasts. 50 years is probably the maximum amount of time even a dedicated gardener spends on their hobby in a lifetime. Young people usually don't do gardening. As people age, they feel an increasingly strong attraction to the land. This phenomenon is a clear example of earthly attraction. The goal is simple, 1 composter for a lifetime. We're not rich enough to keep redoing things all the time. The project also had a second goal, to get a composter with unique features. After observing the decomposition of mowed grass and other organic matter in wooden compost bins for a long time, I noticed that the process goes very well in the center but slows down at the edges. This happens because the slatted boards can't sufficiently prevent moisture from evaporating. In a dry environment, bacteria cease functioning, causing this phenomenon. Penaplex, which hardly absorbs and doesn't let moisture through at all, should change everything. I also thought that in an insulated composter, the process of decomposing bacteria would slow down less during the cold season, and that should speed up the process of getting quality compost. Similar to the rings, I used 3 cm thick Penaplex for the composter. With such a seemingly small thickness, this material actually has quite serious thermal insulation properties. 3 centimeters are equal to the thermal characteristics of a dry wooden beam, 17 to 18 centimeters thick, or a brick wall more than 2 bricks thick. And this isn't science fiction, it's modern technology. As I mentioned before, I use special adhesive mixtures for plastering. They're called adhesive for thermal insulation boards. They're produced by various brands and sold in all hardware stores. I can't single out any particular manufacturer since I'm not a professional, so I probably don't notice any difference when working with them. Professionals can be very particular about materials, but home craftsmen tend to be more flexible. I usually buy the cheapest mix available in the store. If there's a sale, that's even better. If I ever find a mix that's noticeably different from the others, I'll definitely let you know. I made the edging for the opening and the lid in the composter out of a 50mm sewer pipe. It's cheap and gives the product a nice finished look. I cut the hinges and handle out of the same pipe. I applied the stone texture using the cheapest tile adhesive. I marked the joints with a piece of bent wire. My wife assisted with painting, using the most inexpensive exterior paint and around 5 different colorants. On top, we covered the composter with antiseptic tinted acrylic varnish for stone. I'm taking apart the old composter, and voila! Its place is taken by a new composter, a composter in Mediterranean style. The compost heated up to 70 degrees, and that's no joke. I even had to cool it down. The composter is being tested in winter. Hopefully the bacteria inside remain active despite the cold. Making flat blanks using this method is easy and enjoyable. The blank width is 2 meters. So, to reach all the spots, I occasionally balanced on a board above the surface. When reinforcing flat surfaces, gravity helps us. And this kind of work can be done not only by any adult who has never held tools or plaster before, but even children can handle it. I've tested this technology on my family by building an outdoor toilet using it. I decided to upgrade our old homemade sliding gates. I grew weary of the metallic rattling and corrugated metal filling. I was tired of having to constantly rivet the sheets back on, as the strong winds here kept trying to tear them off. And I was also tired of the overall sad look of the gates. The Mediterranean-style courtyard contrasted with the early 21st century relic. Despite the surrounding capitalism, everyone was still treated equally. I was tired of the same corrugated metal. I was tired of the same prefab concrete fences. Bring diversity to the masses, I thought as I went about my work. The adhesive mixtures for insulation contain polymers and good old cement. The polymers ensure reliable adhesion to the foam board, while the cement provides overall strength. As you know, cement mixtures take at least 28 days to reach their full strength. Therefore, the fact that this material can be cut with a utility knife, albeit with difficulty, right after it sets for the first time, doesn't mean it will remain the same after 28 days. I simply cut it to the size of the panel and glued it to the gate frame using the same polyurethane adhesive foam. Someone might wonder why Yasha Koshek made such well-insulated gates. Even if the gate doesn't use the insulation property of Penoplex as a very effective insulator, its inherent durability, biological resistance, and safety are still utilized. And of course, when reinforced on both sides, it becomes a strong and reliable composite, whose mineral surface can be finished with a wide variety of coatings to suit any color, taste, and budget. I decided not to decorate the gate in a Mediterranean style to look like natural stone. Stone and gates are not very compatible concepts. Now, wooden gates are a different story, but that's way too cliche. This time, I chose a store-bought coating made of colored sand, which needed to be mixed with an acrylic base. And I admit, I regretted it. It's not cheap, and I didn't enjoy working with it. It's not easy for non-professionals to use. But the goal was achieved. The gate now stands out from the general dullness and other gates. Testing the new gate filling during the harsh winter. Everything's fine. Only the side light from the low winter sun reveals my flaws in applying the finishing coat. But it doesn't affect the strength or durability at all. Thanks to the new simple technology, small architectural structures appeared in the yard quite often. An outdoor toilet and summer shower were already built. The construction of the plunge pool and composter was witnessed. Therefore, it was decided to expand the network of garden paths that would lead to the new structures. Penoplex is widely used in road construction. It is even laid under runways. It is used in the construction of blind areas, parking lots, and paths. It prevents the soil from freezing and solves the problem of frost heaving. A path as wide as a standard sheet of extruded polystyrene seemed too narrow to me. One as wide as the length of the sheet seemed too wide, but a width of 1.5 sheet widths was just right. I decided to test my idea on 2 blanks. I tried to make the work even simpler and more convenient, and to work not at floor level, but at a more comfortable height at table level. I easily applied the base reinforcing layer to one side of the blank and moved it onto the barrel for further setting. The support area turned out to be too small and the blank bent. If I leave it like this, it will stay bent forever, and that's not right. After rearranging, the mesh wrinkled slightly in some areas, but it's minor and easily fixable. A wooden bench is a more reliable support than a plastic barrel. The table is cleared for working with the second element. All this fuss is because I didn't dare to put the uncured piece with the hanging mesh on the grass. I was afraid that it would come off the edges of the extruded polystyrene foam. And the hanging mesh was needed to wrap the foam piece with it. This way, all the edges will also be reinforced. In case anyone doesn't know yet, let me explain. The notched side of the trowel allows you to apply the adhesive more evenly than if you use the smooth side. Simultaneously maintain the trowel at a consistent angle to the surface, utilizing the notched side for this purpose. If you use trowels with different notch sizes, you can apply different thicknesses of the mixture. You can also change the thickness of the layer by adjusting the angle of the trowel to the surface. That's just my personal observation. The work is similar to wrapping foam board blanks in envelopes made of fiberglass mesh and adhesive mixture. The method of reinforcing wrapping. In the sun and heat, the mixture dried quickly, so we had to moisten it, since cement needs moisture. After making the first 2 elements of the path, I realized that everything should work out, so I bought more materials. Using the horizontal plastering method, the body quickly adapts to working in this position within the first few days after the winter break. After a couple of days, it becomes quite easy. Understanding that there are those who for medical reasons are better off not working at floor level, I made sure that this kind of path can also be made at table height. A manufacturing method that will suit almost everyone. I decided to keep working in my usual position with the workpiece on the floor. The hanging net generated significant attention, and the project advanced considerably. For the final leveling, I use a wide putty knife. Euro renovation level smoothness isn't required here. The smoothness is just by eye. When making the plunge pool, mini pool, and septic tank, a couple of rounded cutoffs were left over, and I used one of them for the path. I decided to lay the first innovative path right to the plunge pool. I also got acquainted with this kind of mixture. Wrapping the foam board seemed more convenient to do on the table. I also worked with this kind of mixture. An envelope that is different from other envelopes. Each subsequent element of the track turned out better and better. I sketched a simple draft and transferred its markings to the ends. I mixed the cheapest tile adhesive. I evenly applied it to the track elements, using a spatula to create a natural unevenness. After a couple of hours, when the tile adhesive started to set, using the end markings as a guide, I made thin line markings. The lines simulated paving stones along the path's edges. I felt like a sculptor creating bas reliefs in the shade of my garden. When I drew the paving stones with wire, I intentionally deviated slightly from the markings for a more realistic look. For improvising along the center of the road panels, no markings were needed since the process was purely creative. Everything is very simple, just like in all previous projects. Then my wife joined in the creative process, taking on the painting of the bas reliefs I had created. You've seen the sculptor's garden, and this is the artist's workshop. Everything here is a world-class masterpiece. This isn't work, it's pure pleasure. If you set aside the creativity, the way our work was organized was probably similar to a team contract.
I end up doing it the same way.
Usually, classic garden paths are very heavy because they're made from heavy materials like paving tiles, natural stone, pavers, or concrete. To keep this heaviness from sinking into the ground over time and to combat frost heaving, a very serious base preparation is required. This takes a lot of hard work and expensive building materials such as sand, gravel, and cement for screeding. For reliability, it's also recommended to lay foam board under all of this. Check the panel's strength. It's only a couple of days old, and just imagine what it'll be like in 28 days when the mix gains full strength. So our path ends up costing less than just preparing the base for traditional walkways. I decided that to lay the innovative path, it's enough to just remove the sod. You can create this path in one location and transport it to another using your vehicle at almost no cost. I wish I had thought of it sooner. Otherwise, the blind area around the house for $1,000 project could have turned out like this. The path can also serve as a warm blind area. I hope that in the future, these paths will connect all the objects in our Penaplex land. It's a very simple and easy installation. There's already a short video on the channel about testing this path with women's heels and a wheelbarrow loaded with concrete weight. The tests were passed with flying colors. This is how our advanced path spends the winter as of this video's release date. We've figured out the garden path in Mediterranean style. It's time to deal with the fences. I start every new Penaplex project by vigorously working it with a wood saw blade. That is, I make it rough. For me, it's already something like a routine. You can skip this step and just buy rough insulation right away, which is called Penaplex Stana. For insulating the plinth, Penaplex Fundament is perfect. There's also extra strong Penaplex Extreme, but for my projects, the universal Penaplex Comfort is enough. It's already become more comfortable to walk. On two sides of our plot, there's still no proper fence. The ones that are affordable look really sad. I mean the prefab, concrete, and corrugated metal ones. Euro picket fences are costly, welded Euro panels are pricey, unreliable, and don't appear rural. A brick fence requires a continuous strip foundation. It's beautiful, but extremely expensive. A wooden fence is attractive, but requires frequent painting. Chain link fencing is cheap, but almost invisible. The footage without any speed up once again proves that everything is really simple. For the homemade Mediterranean style finish that we like, you really don't need to worry about making the base reinforcing layer perfectly even. The project aims to construct a fence that appears solid and costly, ideally in a Mediterranean style, while being lightweight, inexpensive, and simple to set up. My genetic memory told me that the easiest and fastest way to install posts for such a fence is simply to drive them into the ground. To make it easier to drive the posts in, I even tried to make a simple tool. My ancestors likely helped build palisades and possibly considered creating a passage to the Mediterranean Sea. That explains why I like the Mediterranean style so much. The strength of a workpiece reinforced on both sides is dramatically different from one reinforced on only one side. Strength of materials, however. Outside, autumn progressed, bringing cool, damp nights. That's why I didn't dare to take on the 80 linear meters of missing fence. And besides, it's best to check and test everything thoroughly beforehand. To start, an inner fence was built to separate the garden from the vegetable patch. May those who dislike everything Western forgive me. This fence won't be like our typical East Slavic 2-meter high fence, but rather a low one, about a meter tall, more like a Euro-style fence. It's not a mighty fortress palisade, but it's sufficient for tests and experiments. A 2-meter fence separating the garden and vegetable patch is excessive. By the way, we Eastern Slavs, including us Belarusians, are often teased for our fondness for tall, light-blocking fences. All those Europeans and Americans who often don't have any fences between their plots at all. Former compatriots who left and supposedly became more European make fun of us the most. I believe that the phenomenon of fences lies in many areas: social, political, philosophical, and architectural. From a philosophical point of view, fences are closely connected to a person's inner need for order, for structuring everything. Without metaphysical boundaries, it's simply impossible to build a normal society. When there is no clear boundary, there is no sense of a boundary. A vast zone of marginality appears, a zone of disorder and chaos. So we just love order. Our plots may look chaotic as we tend to hoard things. However, when one chaotic area is separated from another, it prevents total chaos from ensuing. My wife couldn't wait for me to hand over the finished bas-reliefs. Used oil is a free time-tested antiseptic. To make the innovative fence more reliable, I chose to secure the finished parts to the posts by pressing them along the entire length with wooden slats, instead of at single points. For this, I left areas without stone texture opposite the posts. During the experiments, the least labor-intensive way to drive in the posts turned out to be preforming a hole with a piece of smaller profile pipe. Pouring water into the hole also simplifies the task. My wife coated our new creation with antiseptic acrylic varnish for stone, and for extra reliability, I reinforced the edges. Such fences can be finished with a huge variety of top coats, both almost free homemade ones and more expensive store-bought options. They should last for 50 years or more. I think the fence turned out well. There's a new project in Penaplex land. Here the fence is undergoing winter testing. Our agricultural theme didn't go without Penaplex either. When it was time to redo the garden beds edged with boards, I won't say anything about the short lifespan of wood in this application. That's obvious. When I made those beds, I didn't have the new knowledge about this technology. Live and learn. I made a raised warm garden bed from composite based on Penaplex 2 seasons ago. Last season, I applied a decorative finishing coat. That's why I want to put it in line with the new projects. The season started with decorating it. I glued the extruded polystyrene foam sheets together lengthwise, creating a warm composite. I marked the depth for sinking the borders. I know that some people don't trust Penaplex. They say it's just chemicals. Let's then, for example, follow the fate of polyethylene film. It's not of natural origin at all, but we carefully covered tomatoes and cucumbers with it. In the northern regions, it's simply impossible to do gardening without it. Polypropylene, polyethylene terephthalate, and polyamide are used to produce agrotextiles. How long did it take for people to overcome their fear of polyethylene and agrotextiles? Instead of the old, long out-of-service outdoor toilet, we got a new outdoor toilet made of Penaplex almost 3 years ago. That's why the remains of the old toilet were used as the roughest organic material and laid at the bottom of the new garden bed. New construction technologies are replacing old ones. The stored wood shavings were also used as rough organic material. I collected sawdust for concrete, but after working with extruded polystyrene foam, I now believe sawdust concrete is a dead end in the development of popular construction technologies. And this is simply a treasure trove of energy, biomass that has been lying around since autumn, made by grinding branches from pruning the garden with a garden shredder. Pure energy. Next, I used fine organic matter from the composter that hadn't yet turned into humus. I covered everything on top with the soil I had removed. The basic principle of a raised warm bed is the decomposition of coarse and fine organic matter, which generates heat. This allows you to plant seedlings earlier and worry less about the whims of nature. Raised beds improve gardening comfort in areas with challenging farming conditions. So our warm composite helps distribute heat more evenly in the warm bed. Waterproofing prevents moisture from escaping through the sides. As often happens, I missed all the deadlines for putting the new bed into operation, so I decided to hand it over to my wife. For now, it's without the final finishing. Usually, high warm beds reach full operation by the second or third season. Organic matter requires time. The new bed overwintered well, and I chose to enhance its look. Especially since I have various leftovers. Don't judge too harshly, this was actually my first experience decorating to look like stone. I did everything in a very simple way. It's cold in early spring, and to keep the decorating work from going to waste, I had to cover the garden bed. The tile adhesive has finally dried. I just covered the imitation stones with tinted antiseptic varnish and left the joints their natural mortar color. The fact that the crocuses have bloomed doesn't mean that spring has completely overcome winter. The cold can still return, and it does. But we've been familiar with warm beds for more than a year. They constantly help us out. This is what the bed looked like last season. And this is how it hid under the snow when I was editing this video. When it got really cold and I didn't want to work outside anymore, I moved to the garage workshop. The good thing about working with this material is that you don't have to stop even during harsh winter. All you need is a small room with above freezing temperatures. This time I got into making garden furniture. I made a small outdoor sofa, utilizing my skill in bending Penaplex extensively during the process. The video turned out to be long because I couldn't describe each item in just a few words. That's all for now. Check the link below for a detailed video on building this unique sofa. For those who want to save a lot on garden furniture, this might be interesting. Go ahead and check it out. I'll also leave links to detailed videos about all the items I mentioned here below the video. Looking at it, you'll easily finish it. What else haven't I mentioned? I used mesh everywhere with a density of 160 grams per square meter. I tried to buy our Belarusian one. It's more expensive than the Chinese one, but it's much nicer to work with. It maintains its structure in your hands. The key factor is tensile strength, which is labeled on the product. Most often I came across ones labeled 1800 by 1900 and 2000 by 2000. The higher these numbers are, the stronger the mesh. Penaplex can be bought at any hardware store or ordered online. I'll leave the link below the video. There are already some brave people who are taking on not only small architectural forms, but also rather large frameless structures made of extruded polystyrene foam. Maybe it's not worth getting carried away like that. In my project, A House for $1,000, I made the walls out of Penaplex combined with a frame. But fortune favors the bold. Give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel Songs of Yasha Kosyak. Subscribe to my Zen TikTok and Instagram. All the links are under the video. Also hit the bell, and then I'll definitely keep you informed. Let there be peace worldwide. Thank you.